one of the things that, we advise a lot of clients on technology strategy, digital strategy, et cetera. And we always sort of advise that you should make technology decisions that check off, at least one of the tenets of technology that we sort of communicate to our clients, our customers. And those tenets are: technology should enhance the member experience, technology should increase staff productivity, and technology should be able to contribute to the bottom line. And I think in theory, whether you're deciding on a new agentic feature, a new AI agent that you want to deploy, or even evaluating a new feature in your software, if it doesn't do at least two and ideally three of those things, it's probably not something that you should be spending a lot of time thinking about.
We're going to touch on AI, which is another important topic that Al is heavily involved in. And while every vendor says they have AI, the real question for operators is not whether AI shows up in a demo, but it's really about how AI can have measurable impact in their operations.
So we are now live. Welcome to this week's episode of Lifts. I'm Matthew Januszek. I'm here with my co-host, Mohammed Iqbal. And we're here with a great guest today. And it got me thinking back to the last time we'd spoken on the podcast. So it was another episode that happened before you, Mo. But it was a really interesting time. I was connected through Paul Bedford, and he said, you really need to speak to this guy called Al. He said he's really got his pulse on this situation. And the situation was actually, I think it was the 1 or 2 days when the pandemic was announced, and literally all the gyms were closed, and you agreed to jump on a podcast on it. I think it was like a Sunday afternoon, and we talked about what to do, what you should do to your customers, how you should deal with billing, and it was a really successful episode because people just didn't know what to do. It's a totally new situation. The world had closed down. Gyms were concerned whether they were going to actually stay in business. So here we're in a much more positive time, and I'll hand it over to you, Mo, to do a reintroduction of our guest today.
Yeah, and actually that's really interesting because I think even from that, and we'll get to a formal intro of Al here in a few seconds, but Al, you also created this gym group, right? And you still continue to meet monthly. So I think so much of what you've done coming out of the pandemic, and of course we'll talk about what you've done before that, still carries on to today. So again, we all kind of appreciate you. And Matthew, I just feel like I literally just saw you because I did see you.
You did.
Yeah.
The opposite side of the country just a few hours ago.
We were together in South Florida and hosted dinner and then, yeah, I literally saw yesterday. Here we are I'm still in the East Coast, but you're back on the West Coast. But I'm excited to have our guest on. So Al, this is Al's technically first time on Lifts, but second time with you, Matthew, on the podcast. Al Noshirvani, who ironically is actually in the DC area with me. We are not together, but he is very probably 4 to 6 miles away from me right now, is the executive chairman of Alta DX. And I've always called him one of the most connected technology leaders in the fitness and wellness industry. And that's because for decades, Al has had a front row seat to the evolution of the fitness market, touching everything from club management software. He's the founder of a platform called MotionSoft, which was acquired by Daxco. He has led digital transformation at the absolute highest levels. He's worked in payments. He's worked on data, now even AI. And he's really had a pulse on how operators need to kind of shape their strategies, how they can grow, how they can retain members and deliver better experiences. In addition to that, he's hosted one of the most coveted tickets in the industry. In fact, we'll get into this later, but one that I was not initially invited to and had to apply for a couple of years, but it's an event called the Fitness Technology Summit, which is back in DC this year. And it's really become one of the key gathering events of technology leaders in fitness from around the world. And that's really the perfect setup for what we're going to be talking about today. Today, we'll be digging into how fitness technology is not just a software decision, but it's really become an infrastructure decision. And platforms and operators need to choose very carefully on almost how every part of the business is impacted by technology, retention, acquisition, revenue, split payments, member experience, and on and on. Payments are a great example when we'll be talking a bit about that today. For so long, payments were part of a back office function, necessary, but not really strategic. But it's really become a strategic lever in terms of how payments are collected, how they're split, various forms of payments, and so on. So we'll be talking about that. We're going to touch on AI, which is another important topic that Al is heavily involved in. And while every vendor says they have AI, the real question for operators is not whether AI shows up in a demo, but it's really about how AI can have measurable impact in their operations. And then finally, it's a question for operators around platforms. And I mentioned the word platform, I think 5 times already in this introduction. But operators are being asked to simplify their technology stacks. At the same time, they're being asked to be more connected, more personalized, deliver better experiences. This is not an easy task. And because consumers are wanting more and more every day, how do operators meet them with where they're being expected? So the bar overall is rising. So today we're going to unpack three big themes with Al. First, how payments are changing. Second, where AI is actually working. And third, what operators should do and what they should demand from their platforms and technology partners. So Al, welcome to Lifts, and I'm really excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me back, Matthew, and it's a pleasure to be with you, Mo, on this episode.
Well, what I thought I'd do just to frame the discussion, we had an interesting conversation just last week with JJ Cregan, and he was really talking about some of the challenges of growing businesses and how when founders set out, they don't always have a clear vision or understanding about where the businesses are likely to go. Certainly, there's a desire and a willingness to grow a large brand, but we were referring to 2 brands, which was Orange Theory and Planet Fitness, and I don't think the founders in those cases would really have imagined that their businesses could be where they were today. But in many cases, there are some key decisions that need to be made. There's certainly a North Star that needs to be focused on, and there's some key things, particularly when it comes to software, which are really important to understand as a bit of a foundation for your business, so that some of those key investments and decisions are going to be relevant as your business grows and expands. Now, when we last spoke, we were entering the pandemic, and I certainly feel that since that time, the world has been in a very different place, where it used to be much more predictable in terms of what was going on in the world, and you could almost set a course for your business, and in most cases, years were relatively predictable. Since the pandemic, there's so many things that are changing in the world. There's so many things that are changing with the consumers that people are focusing on. So just running a business and figuring out where to be is difficult in itself. Although I do feel that we're starting to get a bit of an understanding of what this fitness space is or fitness and wellness space that we're involved in. But the other thing that I feel, as someone who's not really into technology, is AI is a relatively new thing in terms of what we need to figure out as business owners. And what I'm seeing when it comes to AI is software that used to again be relatively predictable. I think that the last innovation I was aware of was where things started to be stored up in the cloud, but you were still kind of getting the same type of service, and then you were having people that would customize some of the existing software for your specific businesses. It seems as though that's turned on its head now, where you almost like software is building itself. You can personalize it to a level that wasn't possible before. So a long introduction to a question, but what are some of the things that business owners need to focus on, which gives us an element of solid ground to stand on when it comes to technology? Because if you invest in any of these systems, they're not things that you can add in and take out really, really quickly. It's a major upheaval, as we're finding out now in our own business. So what advice or things would you suggest that we should look at when it comes to aligning your investments in technology and AI with where your business is today and where it potentially wants to go in future?
I think it's an important question, and one of the things that we advise a lot of clients on technology strategy, digital strategy, et cetera, and we always sort of advise that you should make technology decisions that check off at least one of the tenets of technology that we sort of communicate to our clients, our customers, and those tenets are: technology should enhance the member experience. Technology should increase staff productivity, and technology should be able to contribute to the bottom line. And I think, in theory, whether you're deciding on a new agentic feature, a new AI agent that you want to deploy, or even evaluating a new feature in your software, if it doesn't do at least two and ideally three of those things, it's probably not something that you should be spending a lot of time thinking about. These, and then very specifically around the topic of agentic features, what's really interesting to me with agents is that inevitably, when you start speaking to people about them, they immediately start thinking about the member-facing components of agents, right? How do I make it easier for people to purchase from me? How do I make it easier for people to cancel their membership? To address the click to cancel legislation. And we certainly have built at Alta DX, we have built tools to do that, as have companies like Replify and others that do really great work. But at the end of the day, for me, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that's behind the front desk as opposed to in front of it. And the low-hanging fruit there includes things like agents that manage chargeback disputes. It's a grind for someone on your staff to go do that. You have to go in, you have to pull data, you have to bundle that data, you have to send it, you have to reply to the messages that are going back and forth. That's something that can be entirely automated using agents. Collections is another area where agents can be used, certainly in that what we call phase one collections, or the soft collections process, that sort of start out as reminders and then get progressively stronger up until you collect the debt or send it off to a collections agency, and some people do that. Learning and development agents that help you onboard your staff much more quickly and much more efficiently. This industry isn't necessarily known for, certainly the front desk is not necessarily known as a place where someone wants to go and find a career. And so we tend to have a lot of transiency at the front desk. I have a chain of clubs here in the Mid-Atlantic in the DC market called Method Gyms, and at Method, our attrition rate within our front desk staff is like 85% annualized. So, spending a lot of time training those people, while necessary, is not necessarily a good use of anybody's time. And so, learning and development agents can significantly shorten that. So those are I like to think about it across those three tenets. We used to have a tagline at MotionSoft, and it was get them, know them, keep them. And when we talked about features internally, if it didn't check off, well, we would go through this sort of Six Sigma process and, evaluate all the features that our customers were asking. And anything that checked off all three boxes would immediately rise to the top.
I love that. I mean, that's simply also translated to acquisition, engagement, and retention. But I really love the get them, know them, keep them.
Yeah.
So much of what I've learned in the last decade has come from people like yourself directly, but also from this event that you've put on. Just speak a bit about the history of the Fitness Technology Summit. It truly is a must-have or must-be at, but it's invite only, so you can't just buy a ticket and go. What was behind the creation of that, and how has it evolved over the last few years?
Yeah, so it started out in, this is our 15th year doing it. We initially kicked it off when I was the CEO of MotionSoft. And at the time, it was called the MotionSoft Technology Summit. And really, it was intended. Now, we obviously got the benefits of it. And back in those days, the only club management software company that would be in the room was MotionSoft. Today, that's changed. But the idea was to get a bunch of organizations, whether they be our customers or prospects or interested attendees, quite frankly, to sit around the table and share technology ideas. if you go rewind the clock back, and I've been in this industry now for 25 years, if you rewind the clock back to the HFA shows of 25 years ago, technology wasn't even a blip on the floor. There was a bunch of club management software companies. And I'd argue that back then they weren't even software companies. They were collections companies that had
Yes.
software, or revenue cycle management companies that had software. And so at the time, it occurred to me that we needed to find some sort of a venue where technology leaders in the space, who tend to be much more collaborative, right? You get the CEO of, Equinox and Lifetime in a room, they're probably not going to share a lot of ideas. But if you get their CIOs in the room, it's interesting how much idea sharing happens. And so we got lucky. I happened to, that first year we did it 15 years ago, through LinkedIn, I sent Jay Blahnik a message, never imagining that he would show up. But Jay accepted the message. He showed up with the first Apple Watch on his wrist. He wouldn't take it off, so none of us could touch it, but he walked it around the room on his wrist and showed us all the Apple Watch. And then he spoke about where he thought wearables were going to go. I wish I had recorded it. I remember a lot
Right.
of what he said. And I'd say about 80% of what he predicted would happen in the wearable world has happened, and it's come true. So anyway, the event started out, and it was at the Marriott Marquis in New York City, Times Square. I would never do an event there again, but not because it's the Marriott Marquis, but because it's Times Square in New York City. But we had about, I don't know, 30 or 40 executives in the room. We asked a few vendors. MyZone was there, Matrix was there, Techno was there. We asked them to be in the room with us. And then fast forward to 2020, when I sold MotionSoft, we ended up keeping the summit and the assets of the summit, rebranded as the Fitness Technology Summit. We're now doing it for 5 years. And we've got 2 events this year. One of them in London in about 2 weeks, May 19th and 20th. Tickets still available if you want. Yes, definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. And the other one in October in Washington, D.C. And the last thing I'll say about it is the event tends to be very thematic, and we spend a lot of time thinking about what we're going to do. So 4 years ago, we did a panel on GLP-1s, and now everyone's doing panels on GLP-1s. And 3 years ago, we talked about AI and what was happening down that path. And of course, so we try to stay ahead of the curve. This year, at our European event, the theme is Mind the Gap, where human performance meets intelligent systems. And, we're really going to talk about how AI is changing and transforming businesses and turning data into action. And in our US event, it's location, 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 from physical places to digital spaces. And this is really, you wonder, is this operations? Is it technology? Well, I think we're straddling both here, right? I think we're going to be talking about using intelligent data platforms to decide where your next location is going to be, solutions like Buxton, et cetera, that are out there. We're going to be talking about how to use wearable devices and things like beacon technologies inside the 4 walls of the club to identify concentrations of members where you might put a new piece of equipment. So really, it's not just about selecting a location. It's about leveraging technology to help you make decisions.
I like the way you explain the answer to the first question, and then also how you built on that to answer what Mo was talking about with your event, because I think the challenge with a lot of these technology events, or people that are into technology, they come from that world and they use that language, and it's almost like, what are you talking about? Even the AI, there's so many sessions on AI, and you can end up getting very confused with AI instead of what AI is doing. And I think you really sort of boil it down to some real simple things, which is, from your previous company, how do we get to know them? What was it? Get to know them better and keep them, or something along those lines. And I think that's very much helpful when it comes to even things like AI, because these are the fitness industry is a people to people business, and a lot of times I think if we're not careful, we can lose really what we're actually trying to achieve and end up building something that may just be relevant and innovative and something that gets people to want to even fund, as opposed to having something that's going to make a meaningful difference to your business that probably supports where you're going over the long term. And it brings me to a point, a question that we wanted to talk about, which you referred to earlier, which is the click to cancel. And the FTC has sort of recently, I think last year, went after a few operators like the Sporter, City Sports Clubs, and a few others around this. The challenge of making these cancellation policies quite difficult. And I just wonder, from your perspective, what are you seeing in this space? And because it seems as though payments and being able to cancel things like memberships are now a lot more than probably what they were previously. These seem to be really important touch points that have the opportunity to build trust, enhance the member experience. And so maybe if you can just touch on this from your perspective and one, explain where you think we are with some of these new laws that are coming in, and what should we be thinking about as business owners as it relates to using those as opportunities to develop a stronger relationship with many of your clients.
It's interesting. I'll go back to the conversation we had, Matthew, 5 years ago coming out of COVID. And I remember discussing the fact that it was really important for operators to communicate to their members. And I'm going to come to the whole click to cancel. So bear with me for a moment. I think that operators that are not that subscribe to the sleeping dogs theory that, if you poke the sleeping dog, it's going to wake up and it's going to leave. Those are the folks that didn't make it out of COVID. And a lot of people, 25% of this industry in North America, shut down during COVID, whether it was locations or entire businesses. And I think that it was a testament to the fact that those operators that took a proactive approach in communicating to their members, telling members what was happening, succeeded. I'll give you my own story. At our gyms, we went to our members and we said, you want to cancel, you want to freeze? No problem. We'll honor that. But we need your help to get through this. And in essence, what we did is we put together a program and we said, pay us during COVID. We will turn around and issue you an equivalent credit amortized over a 24-month period once we open back up. So it did two things. They knew that they weren't wasting money because they were going to get it back. And by the way, once we opened and they started coming back and they saw those credits, our attrition rate during that period of time was actually lower than it had ever been, because people now thought that if they left, they were going to leave all those credits that they had helped us out with on the table. So it was like a win-win for everybody. So members need to be communicated with. Now, fast forward to FTC. Unfortunately, I'm sure you've talked about this on the podcast before. We sort of, as an industry, got lumped in with the app stores, right? The Google Store and the Apple App Store, where the business process is sign up for a 7-day free trial, and hey, we're going to make this really easy for you. You don't even have to come back here. We're just going to start billing you. And it created a lot of angst amongst consumers, and consumers started to push back. And that's where state AGs came to the table and basically said, we want to create click to cancel legislation. So if you join online, you must be able to cancel online. That basically what it boiled down to. The good operators have been doing this for a lot of years. They're not doing it because it's a mandate or it might become a mandate. They're doing it because it's good customer service. And quite honestly, this industry, when it comes to some of the tactics that have been employed for years and years around sales, around cancellations, doesn't have a great reputation. And the reality is we pay for that. We pay for it in the rates that we are charged by credit card companies. We pay for it in the reputation that we have as an industry. I've heard people in the past equate the process of buying a gym membership to buying a used car. You get locked inside the glass enclosed room and someone beats you up until you agree to buy. And so those types of things just need to change. And consumers aren't going to deal with organizations that don't make it easy to do business with them. So click to cancel, by the way, is an example of a function or a feature that enhances the member experience. Clearly, it makes it easier for the consumer to do business with us. It certainly reduces staff productivity, because what's happening right now is people are calling, the front desk is trying to do a save. Inevitably, people lie and say, you know what, I'm moving, which is the number one reason that people cancel. They're not moving, by the way. They're just that's the easiest answer because the contract allows that to happen without fees. Oftentimes, when you're on a contract, and then they're done with these types of technologies. And we build an agentic click to cancel function. It's not just about clicking to cancel. If you go to Netflix today and want to cancel your membership, Netflix will say, "Well, we'd like you to stay. How about if you pause your membership? Or how about if we give you a month for free or 50% off the next 3 months?" These solutions that are out there enable that too. Again, enhancing the member experience and changing what many would view as a tech tax, right? Something that costs us money in the form of this. Now I got to go build something else to address this new regulation. Take that, throw it on its head and make it a revenue generating thing. Always view technology as revenue generating function as opposed to just a cost. There's certainly cost elements around security, et cetera. But at the end of the day, something like click to cancel can be viewed as a revenue generating item.
This week's episode of the Lifts podcast is brought to you by EGYM. EGYM is building the future of smart fitness. Their connected ecosystem combines intelligent equipment, AI-powered software, and the WellPass corporate wellness platform to help operators grow their business and deliver measurable health outcomes to exercisers of all shapes and sizes. From powering gym floors to supporting employee wellness, EGYM is redefining the workout one rep at a time. Learn more at egym.com.
And I've always said that, look, if you don't regulate yourself as an industry, you are going, like, that is going to happen to you by people who do not know it. And I think click to cancel is a good example of where I think the idea behind it is sound and it's right, but it's really designed for apps and other types of subscriptions. We got lumped into that. I've got a funny story, Al. So in 2002, when I graduated undergrad, the first gym I joined was a Planet Fitness. Okay. And I was living in somewhat upstate New York, but it's called Orange County. For those of you in the tri-state area probably know that because I was working in northern New Jersey. So I joined Planet Fitness, and then I moved to a suburb of New Jersey in Essex County. So my contract, though, and it was a year contract, my contract said that I had to move within 50 miles, and then I can get out of it. But that was like 30 miles. And 30 miles, though, in the tri-state area is like you're in a different state. It's like over an hour away, and they wouldn't cancel my membership. So I opened up my paper and it said, funny, but it said ABC Financial on it, and it was Planet Fitness. And I was so frustrated, and I would write. So I had to write a certified letter with an address, and ultimately I didn't even get it canceled. So then there was like a renewal clause, and I had to like time it correctly. I was so frustrated by the gym industry, and I was, this is 2002. And it's just funny now. I'm at ABC. Planet Fitness is a client of ours, and just to see how far these things have come. But I agree. The other thing I would add is if you have a positive experience and a positive relationship with a member, they're going to come back. Because I'll tell you what, when I moved to Essex County, I joined New York Sports Club. Because, and ironically, they're also on ABC. But I didn't understand what happens, behind the scenes, but I was not going to join a Planet Fitness, right? Because of that experience. And now a lot of that has changed in those years. And I think we're definitely learning a lot. I want to move to payments. And I've got a few questions to ask you on payments here. So recently the talk of the industry was really EGYM and Playlist coming together, and Playlist has MindBody, ClassPass, and a couple other companies underneath it, but to really form a company that, what I just recently read, is going to surpass $1 billion in revenue. There's certainly a force to be dealt with. But what I really got out of it was that it was really dealing on an alternate form of payments. To me, the aggregator model with MindBody having ClassPass and EGYM having WellPass, that to me is a payments play. So when you think about it, consumers are going to be paying and accessing memberships, I believe, in very different ways in the coming years. One is through their company benefits, the companies like WellHub or WellPass, providing access, paying for your memberships, right? The second is by joining a network like a ClassPass. The third are neobanks. And so when you think about how as an industry, how we viewed payments, which for a long time was primarily ACH, and then we went to credit cards, how do you think operators should be thinking about the evolution of payments?
I mean, there's so much going on in in the fintech space right now. Everything from the ability to offset your payments rates by charging what some call flex fees, what other call surcharges. I think that this the move to least route or least cost routing with debit is a big move.
Yes.
I think that we can talk about that.
Especially, I would add, Al, in different countries where they're having direct to bank with no fees. And to your point, in places like Australia, they're even coming after fees that you charge on the service.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't think we're far away from that here. I mean, one of the things that this industry has become accustomed to, and we did it at MotionSoft. I know many of the other software companies do it. Is this concept of the blended rate, and I don't want to get down the rabbit hole of payments here, but I will for just one moment. So, credit cards are issued by Visa, MasterCard. They're distributed by the likes of Bank of America, Chase, Capital One. They are then used, obviously, by merchants and accepted by merchants and used by consumers. So those are all the people that have their hands in the cookie jar, so to speak. At the end of the day, the most important thing is for that payment to go through. If it goes through and the service is provided, presumably well, the consumer is happy, the merchant is happy, the issuer is happy, and Visa and MasterCard are happy. And so that's sort of the world. So years ago, it was very simple. People would charge something called interchange, which was the rate that Visa, MasterCard charged, and then plus something, plus a number of basis points, plus a couple of pennies per transaction, etc. It became complicated in fitness for a couple of reasons: card present transactions, card not present transactions, moto transactions that happen on the web. And so we made it simple as software companies and payments companies, and we introduced this thing called the blended rate. The blended rate creates a flat rate of 3-4%, whatever it is, on your credit cards, and you pay that across the board for every single card type, no questions asked. Well, it was simple. But then several years ago, there was some legislation passed by Congress that said, listen, you can't do that with the debit cards that we issue, because a debit card is in essence an ACH transaction with a Visa logo on it, and it's all riding on the Federal Reserve's rails. And so charging interchange is not real. There is no interchange. And so the Durbin Act changed the rules. Now, our industry hasn't caught up yet. But I do think that at some point, some state attorney general, maybe we shouldn't talk about it, but some state attorney general is going to come along and say, this concept of the blended rate, which, by the way, it's not just people in fitness, big companies, Square, et cetera, are doing this.
Ticketmaster, look at what happened with Live. So literally 2 weeks ago, Live Nation and Ticketmaster got a massive blow against fees.
That's right. And these fees that we are arbitrarily adding have an impact on the consumer because they end up paying more. They have an impact on the merchant. They end up paying more. The guys at the top of the chain are doing pretty well, but everybody else has now a higher cost associated with it. So whether it's chargeback fees or statement fees or these blended rates that are just applied to debit cards when they really shouldn't be. By the way, when you walk into a 7-Eleven and you use your credit card at a 7-Eleven, a debit card, you pay a much lower rate, anywhere from 1/4 point to 1.25 points, versus what we pay and companies like Ticketmaster and Square and others are paying, which is in excess of 3 or 4%. So I do think that that's a big shift that's happening. I think the other thing is it's interesting. You nailed it. Initially, for years, when I go back 25 years, everything was ACH. And then the credit card company said, how do we get more credit cards? Well, they're going to start issuing reward cards and benefit cards and all this stuff. And so people went from literally 20% credit card, 80% ACH to 80% credit card, 20% ACH. And today, you know this, Mo, at Planet Fitness, for example, you cannot pay, except for your initial transaction when you're signing up online, you cannot pay for your recurring membership dues at Planet Fitness using a credit card.
Right.
You do that for a very specific reason. Credit card collection rates are significantly higher on the first attempt than ACH collection rates are significantly higher on the first attempt than credit card. The time to revenue is shorter, and the cost is significantly less. ACH transactions, call it 25 to 50 cents based on volume per transaction. Credit card transaction rates 3%. So on a $100 transaction, you can either pay $3 or 50 cents, and that adds up. So there's a lot happening. The neobanks you mentioned also have How do we control people's ability to throttle the use of neobanks? Because obviously with recurring payments, you can't control it anymore. We talked about least cost routing. We're now talking about companies like Stripe and Adyen who've created technologies that allow them to predict when someone is likely to have money on their accounts, so they can do their reattempts. They've incorporated AI into their system so that they can monitor your usage as a consumer. So on January 1st, my credit card declines because I didn't pay my bill, and then I pay my bill. And then I go use that card at the gas station that's also an Adyen processing gas station. It'll send an alert to the gym and say, hey, the card just went through, go try it again. So you can do real-time reattempts so that you maximize the ability to collect. There's a lot happening in payments, and I do think that it's going to change the way that we interact with consumers, that consumers interact with us, and ultimately these are all solutions that are intended to lower the cost of collections and maximize time to revenue.
I want to move on to the fitness experience itself, because that's the reason we've talked a lot about the infrastructure and what supports the things that happen on the gym floor.
Yeah.
But I just want to move on to there for a moment. If one of the recent news stories is that Spotify and Peloton have announced a partnership, so they're bringing over 1,400 Peloton classes into Spotify's new fitness hub for premium users. And my guess is that they're going to be able to really target the types of workouts, really utilize, I guess, some of their consumer data and AI to be able to start to provide, I guess, a very enhanced and personalized exercise experience based on what I know about those two companies. The fitness industry, Matt's gym or Mary's gym probably doesn't have that level of sophistication yet, and they're still based on, I guess you could call it almost like an analog system. What are you seeing when it comes to the workouts that happen on the gym floor in some of your spaces, and how can we use technology, or how can we be thinking about using technology and AI to enhance, as some of the things that you said earlier, which is getting to know people better and keeping them better through some of the things that are clearly happening in other industries that are not core. Fitness is not core to some of these businesses, and yet what they're doing is they're making probably a lot more progress than the traditional bricks and mortar business at the moment.
I'd really love to see us use AI, and Mo, you're much better versed on this whole topic. And I have had since the pandemic several conversations about Peloton. I'm pretty opinionated about the approach that they took when the pandemic first came, and the reaction that they had to our industry. So I think that their new approach of really being a content company is great. I'm happy to see that they're partnering with us rather than fighting us, because that wasn't their initial perspective. So I think new leadership has been good in terms of working with our industry. In terms of the gym floor, this is an industry that has the share of wallet is particularly important. No one's making money on $9 memberships when someone's coming in 25 times a month. It's just, you're not making money. Just the water usage and the depreciation on equipment, et cetera, is going to be is higher than that. And so if we could somehow figure out a way to utilize AI to create more affinity between the gym and essentially allow the gym to become the trusted source of fitness and wellness in people's lives, I mean, that should be our North Star. And I do think that it's possible to do that with AI. We have a penetration rate industry-wide in personal training. The best operators are barely cracking the mid-teens in terms of personal training penetration. The typical operator is sub 10% in terms of personal training penetration. And if we could somehow figure out a way to utilize AI to show people how to onboard, how to succeed, and then begin to embrace one-on-one sort of handheld personal training, I think that would be a big win. I remember hearing, and I've repeated this story many times. I remember speaking to Dr. Paul Bedford, who we mentioned earlier, Matthew, years ago. I think it may have been actually at the first Tech Summit. And he basically said, it is not wise to have a single sort of process for the customer journey once a member joins. And by the way, 90% of the gyms that I work with have a single process. They've got this quick start program or this member join program where I join and then I got to go through my personal training session and maybe a group exercise class and a fitness assessment and a tour of the gym. And it's the same for everybody. And Paul's point was that if you've got somebody, and we've all been there, by the way, you haven't been in the gym for months and months and months. That first day back, you go in, you can do anything. You can lift everything, you can squat, but God, the next morning you feel like you know what. And so Paul's point was, if you can figure out a way of creating sort of cohorts, right? This is a person who's never been in a gym. This is a person who was a college athlete but hasn't done anything for the last 10 years, and create a custom journey for them that doesn't necessarily have them coming in 5 times in the first month of membership. Maybe we need to throttle that back to 3, right? But use AI to be that communication voice between you and the member, and then further use it to tell the member how to properly use equipment, because oftentimes someone comes back into the gym after not being in for a long time and they hurt themselves, and that's the end of it. They quit a month later. So that's where I see AI being used much more effectively. And wearables, and Mo's obviously, the expert on all things wearables, and can talk about how that all plays into it too.
And Matthew, which reminds me, we should get Paul back. We've had Paul on a couple of times, and he's absolutely fantastic.
He's great.
So we're almost at time, Al, and I feel like we can talk to you for hours, and maybe we should have you back again, perhaps after the 2 conferences or even in between the 2, just to talk about some learnings that you've had. I've had selfishly a lot of questions to ask you around what operators should think about and what they should demand from platforms, right? Because that's something that I think about all the time, is to say that's changing. And I think that operators need to be educated a bit more on what they should ask people like ABC or other platforms like that. And the leverage is really going on their side now, but a lot of times they don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if you could give us a few comments on, from an operator perspective, one, how important platforms are really to their future, because I think they don't understand sometimes like the importance of selecting the right technology partner. And second, what are some of the key things they should be thinking about?
I think in my view, again, I like to work in 3. So I'm gonna name 3 things again that I always look for when I selected my technology partner for my gyms. I want to have configurability, I want to have flexibility, and I want to have extensibility. And each of those, it means very specific things. Extensibility, today with a single location, I had very different needs than I have now with 7 locations. I wanted the single throat to choke. I wanted basic functionality. But as we grew, I needed to extend that functionality. And look, at the end of the day, the fitness software companies, they really have one core some component that they have to do really well. And most of them do it really well. ABC certainly does. They collect your money for you. Right? If they can do that really, really well, all of the other things are sort of gravy. But at some point, and ABC is a great example, by the way, Mo, and I know you've done a lot of work on this around the sort of exchange that they've built, their partner network, et cetera. I want to be able to do something more than what ABC provides on a particular function. The one I always use an example is bulk emailing. If I ask 10 different club management software companies if they support bulk emailing, every one of them will say yes. There are entirely publicly traded companies that do nothing but make sure that emails get to people's inbox. Yeah. And no one's ever going to do it as well as them. And so I need to know that at some point, my software company is going to be extensible enough to be able to give me that function. So that's extensibility. Configurability, my business changes. I don't want to be put in a box. I need to know that the software is flexible enough to make changes without having a massive impact on my data. Like, I don't want to arbitrarily go in, and to this day, I can't believe it, but there are software companies out there that give people database access. They're literally going to tables and changing prices. It's crazy. And so, I want to make sure that the configuration choices are there for me to be able to make tweaks as my business changes. Like, how could I have supported COVID and what I did in COVID, which we talked about like credit someone 24 months for some amount that they prepaid. I want to have that configured. Maybe that's a little bit of an edge case, but you know what I mean. And then the flexibility. My needs, Planet Fitness, you mentioned them, Mo. They started out with contracts, tough to cancel. Today, it's all month to month. And I need to know that the software that I'm working with gives me the flexibility to change the way I do business. Because, by the way, the relationship between ABC and Planet changed dramatically when they went from a contract business where ABC was responsible for all the member services, collections, et cetera, to a month-to-month cancel anytime. And I need to know that my partner is going to be able to support me and my business processes that are inevitably going to change over time.
Matthew, any key takeaways from you?
Yeah, I've got it's. I like it when I get quite a breakthrough that I then put in my notes and use going forward. And although you and I have talked a lot about technology, I really like the way that Al's just simplified this whole thing for me. And I think I've got it right where he says,
is my co-host position at risk now, Matthew? Is that what you're saying? Should I be worried?
Well, I love what he says about, does the technology help you get to know people, know them better, and keep them? Was that what you said, Al?
Yep. No, although I will say the Daxco did buy the trademark for that, so that belongs.
Okay.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Very wise of them. But what it meant in my terms is really forget about technology, forget about AI, in terms of that being a direction. And I think Al gave me the way to think about this is what is it you're trying to achieve, and how do you use technology for those goals? And then you can rank those in terms of importance for your business. And then you could go to smart people like you, Mo, and say, how do we actually make that happen? And I think that was a real breakthrough, because I do feel that the number of podcasts and events that I've been to that really lead with this sort of AI as a direction, but totally confuse everybody with the weeds of really what we should be doing, and almost getting you to move towards something that is probably not even relevant for where you and your business are. So I really appreciate you giving me that, and I'm going to certainly put a lot more thought into that one myself. So, Mo, any takeaways from you? I didn't mean to insult you in any way, did I?
It's okay. I'm just kind of concerned now if Al's going to be joining you on next week's
I got
episode.
plenty to do.
It's okay. I'm okay. No, I think to me, Al, I really liked how you just went back to the basics. And even though we live in a real transformative era with things like AI and peptides and everything else, at the end of the day, it really comes down to those three things, which is, are you acquiring the customer well? Are you retaining and engaging with that customer well? And then are you keeping them, well, rather acquiring engagement, and then are you retaining them? And it really, that has not changed in decades. So even though the technology and the levers and the tools in how we approach the member might change, the core premises of what keeps the fitness industry going still remains the same. So I thought that was pretty interesting, in how you kind of took it back to basics.
Well,
Any final thoughts, Al, with you?
I just wanted to say one final thing. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I feel like you got your payback now, Mo. I didn't. It took 5 years for me to get on lifts, but it's exciting to be on here. So now we're even.
We're even now. We're even. And for those of you that don't know, I mean, I did apply to go to Al's event for many years and was rejected. And then finally, I was gratefully accepted in.
Yes, very happy to have him. The only thing I'll say is I think that, I know a lot of technology folks, watch this, subscribe to the podcast and watch it. I think that as much as we want the operators to change perspective, I think the technology teams also need to change perspective. I think that it's really incumbent on those leaders to view the rest of the business as their customers. They are not the ones that should be making the technology decisions anymore. This isn't just about what computers do you want to have on your front desk or how big do you want your screen to be. We're making decisions that are strategic in nature, that are enabled by technology. So your marketing team, your operations team, your finance team, your administrative team, they're all leveraging technology in some way. And I view the IT guy, the CIO, the CTO, et cetera, as the enabler of those customers and the needs that they have. And so I just think that everyone in our industry should view it that way.
Thank you very much, Al, for joining us this week. If anyone's got anything from this episode like I have today, then there's a couple of things that I'd ask you to consider. Give us a like. You can leave some comments on our YouTube channel. You can leave a review on the iTunes on the iTunes. I think you called it what is it called? iTunes podcast. Yeah, you can leave a review on iTunes. And then also we've just started a lifts report, which is fantastic. Mo has headed that up. There's a lot of really fantastic information. So if you'd like to go deeper on any of these subjects, then go over to the Lifts website and subscribe to the Lifts report. I'd highly recommend it, and particularly if you enjoy some of these conversations. So that's it for this week. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode.